Jannik Sinner, the golden boy of tennis, caught in a doping scandal not once but twice. 2 failed drug tests, the same banned substance. Any other athletes? Suspended.
I'm gonna say, yeah, for sure it wasn't easy, it was probably like the worst time in my life.
But Sinner? He's still out there, winning titles like nothing ever happened. Why? Authorities accepted his defense that he was accidentally contaminated by his own physiotherapist. But is that really justice? Normally, tennis authorities enforce strict zero-tolerance policies on doping. Even minor infractions have led to severe consequences. So why is Sinner still playing? Is this fair given the circumstances, or is the sport protecting one of its biggest stars? Let's break down the detail, reaction, and the murky implications of this controversial case.
Has he been treated the same as others? And I think this is where it comes down to. I think we all...
The doping scandal that shook the tennis world. I still remember the buzz around Jannik Sinner in March. The guy was on fire at Indian Wells, one of the biggest tournaments on the ATP Tour. He was playing like a machine, dismantling top-ranked opponents with ease. Tennis fans were convinced we were watching the sport's next dominant champion. And whether you're just starting out or have been playing for years, every tennis player shares one common goal: improving their game. But if you're like me, it can be hard to make consistent progress because I'm just hitting balls without knowing what to fix. I tried coaching, which was awesome, but it's expensive and the wait between sessions is just dead time. Then I discovered the Top Spin Pro tennis training aid. It's literally a coach in your pocket. It tracks your hits and teaches you exactly how to control the ball. In fact, I found just a couple minutes a day is enough to learn how to spin the ball and control your racket face, even though I'd been hitting flat for years. Unlike a coach, it's also totally flexible to your schedule, is lightweight and portable, so you can take it on the go. I thought maybe I was just crazy, so I looked on some forums and found this tech is now being recommended by coaches and professionals worldwide. Now I'm making much faster progress, learning to play tennis like a pro, and it only cost me as much as 2 of those coaching sessions. Of course, it's not magic, and it still takes time to lock in new muscle memory, but it's a lot easier and more fun to be able to get the reps in anytime, anywhere. So check the link in the description to order the Top Spin Pro tennis training aid today, so you too can train like the pros. Oh, and little old me. But while we were all caught up in his incredible form, something else was brewing behind the scenes. Something that would change the conversation entirely. Then came the bombshell. The International Tennis Integrity Agency, ATIA, dropped a shocking announcement. Sinner had tested positive for clostebol, a powerful anabolic steroid that's strictly banned in professional tennis. And if that wasn't bad enough, this wasn't just a one-time mistake. Just days after Indian Wells, a second test confirmed the exact same substance in his system. Now, let's be honest. If an athlete fails one drug test, there's room for doubt. Maybe it was an accident, maybe there was some bizarre explanation. But 2 tests? That's when alarm bells should be blaring. Normally, when this happens, governing bodies step in immediately. Provisional bans, forced withdrawals, investigations that take months, if not years. That's how it worked for Maria Sharapova, Richard Gasquet, and Martina Hingis, players who were sidelined for much less. But Sinner? He just kept playing as if nothing had happened. No suspension, no missed matches, just an ongoing investigation in the background while he continued stacking up wins. And then came the final ruling. According to WADA and the ITA, Sinner was not at fault. Their conclusion? He had no negligence and his 3-month suspension was retroactive, which meant he wouldn't miss a single major tournament. Wait, what? A 2-time doping violation and he still gets to play without consequences? No provisional suspension, no damage to his ranking, no disruption to his career. How is that even possible? If this system is really about fairness, why was this case handled so differently? And let's be real, if this had been a lower-ranked player, would they have gotten the same treatment? Or is tennis bending its own rules to protect one of its biggest stars? Then came the explanation. Sinner's team wasted no time spinning a story, one that conveniently placed all the blame on his physiotherapist. Their version of events? A tragic, unavoidable case of accidental contamination. Here's how they say it happened. His physiotherapist, Giacomo Naldi, had used a topical spray containing clostebol to treat a small cut on his own hand. Then, during a routine massage, he supposedly forgot to wear gloves, accidentally transferring the banned substance onto Sinner's skin. That's it. That's the whole defense. And guess what? The authorities bought it. The ITA ruled that Sinner bore no fault, handed him a retroactive suspension, and just like that, he was in the clear. No real punishment, no lost ranking points, just a perfectly timed 3-month break that conveniently didn't interfere with his career. Now, call me skeptical, but this doesn't sit right. Anti-doping rules exist for a reason. Athletes are fully responsible for what enters their bodies. No exceptions. That's the same rule that got Maria Sharapova banned for 15 months after testing positive for a medication she had legally used for years before it was suddenly prohibited. It's the same rule that saw Richard Gasquet suspended after testing positive for trace amounts of cocaine, later proven to have come from kissing someone at a party. And yet Sinner fails 2 drug tests for an actual steroid, and all he gets is a minor technicality? If this had been an unknown player outside the top 100, would they still be competing? Would they have been given the benefit of the doubt? Or would they have been kicked off the tour so fast their career would never recover? For me, the answer is obvious. Tennis bends its own rules when it benefits its biggest stars, and instead of closing the controversy, the ITIA's decision only made things worse. Now, people aren't just questioning Sinner's innocence, they're questioning the entire integrity of the sport. So, what's the real story here? Are we supposed to believe this was just an unfortunate mistake? Or are we watching a system that protects its most marketable players at all costs? Because to me, it's looking a lot like the latter. With the scandal raging, Jannik Sinner wasted no time in damage control mode. His first move? Firing 2 key members of his team, his fitness trainer Umberto Ferrara and his physiotherapist Giacomo Naldi. The same Naldi who, according to the official story, caused this entire mess by failing to wear gloves. It was a calculated move, one designed to send a message. It wasn't me, it was them. Sinner maintained that he never knowingly took a banned substance, but by cutting ties with those involved, he made sure they took the fall. Meanwhile, he publicly addressed the controversy, talking about the emotional toll it had taken and the sleepless nights spent fearing the consequences.
Always try to remind myself that I haven't done anything wrong, which already this gives you, a little bit head up. For sure, I had sleepless nights, during this time. Now again, it's gonna be not easy, but in my mind I knew that this could happen potentially.
But what consequences? Instead of challenging the ruling, Sinner accepted the 3-month suspension imposed by WADA, one that conveniently allowed him to return just in time for the Rome Masters and Roland Garros. No legal battle, no major tournaments missed, just a short break and a perfectly timed comeback. During his enforced time off, he trained harder than ever, sharpening his game and preparing to return stronger. The goal was simple, to silence critics on the court, but as his return approached, the controversy only intensified. Novak Djokovic openly questioned the fairness of the ruling.
Consensus, or I would say a majority of the players that I've talked to in the locker room, not just in the last few days, but also last few months, that are not happy with the way this whole process has been handled. The majority of the players doesn't feel that it's fair.
Pointing out the inconsistencies in how doping cases were handled.
A ripe time for us to really address the system, because the system and the structure obviously doesn't work of anti-doping. It's obvious.
Fans and analysts alike wondered, if Sinner wasn't a rising superstar, would he have been treated the same way? Sinner had done everything he could to move on, but the whispers of favoritism weren't going away. As he stepped back onto the court, one question loomed. Would his talent be enough to rebuild trust? Or would this scandal haunt him forever? Just when I thought this scandal couldn't get any murkier, Jannik Sinner's former physiotherapist Giacomo Naldi decided to break his silence, and let me tell you, his words only made things worse. In an interview with Lego, Naldi dropped a cryptic statement that set off alarm bells. "I'm really sorry. I wish I could tell everything that happened, but I can't talk because the case isn't over yet. I hope that sooner or later I'll be able to reveal what really happened to bring some clarity. Right now, the way things are being interpreted, I'm being painted as the only one responsible, but that's not the case. Now, if that doesn't sound suspicious, I don't know what does. What exactly is he hinting at? If he's not the only one responsible, then who is? What's stopping him from coming clean? And more importantly, what else is being kept under wraps? This interview didn't just spark speculation, it blew the whole case wide open again. If Naldi was just a scapegoat, does that mean Sinner's team was more involved than they let on? Or is Naldi just trying to shift blame now that he's been thrown under the bus? The ITIA may have technically closed the case, but this statement makes it clear we're still not getting the full story. If everything was truly above board, why would one of the central figures in this scandal be hinting at a cover-up? Why can't he speak freely? Honestly, this raises more questions than answers, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Tennis fans and analysts are demanding more transparency because, at this point, the real scandal might not even be what happened, but what's still being hidden. Let's be real, Sinner's case isn't just about one player getting off easy. It's exposing a much bigger issue. Are tennis's anti-doping rules actually fair, or do they exist only when convenient? Right now, the system is black and white. Athletes are fully responsible for whatever ends up in their bodies. No exceptions. It doesn't matter if it was an accident, a mislabeled supplement, or tainted food. If you test positive, you're guilty. But if that's the rule, why is Sinner still playing? Here's the thing. In other sports, if a team staff member screws up, they face consequences. Yet in tennis, even when the contamination is directly linked to a member of the athlete's staff, only the player gets punished. And in this case, Sinner barely got a slap on the wrist. This raises an important question. Should the whole team be held accountable when doping violations happen? If Sinner's physiotherapist was the real culprit, shouldn't he be facing a serious sanction? Because right now, the system basically says, don't worry, you can be reckless. It's the player who takes the fall. Of course, some people argue that changing the rules could be a disaster. If support staff were penalized, would players start shifting blame to their trainers just to avoid bans? Would medical professionals refuse to work with athletes out of fear of being punished? But let's be honest, this system already has cracks, and Sinner's case just made them impossible to ignore. This isn't just about one doping scandal anymore. It's about whether tennis is willing to keep looking the other way when a top player gets caught. So where does that leave us? Jannik Sinner is still on the court, still racking up wins, and still sitting comfortably at the top of the ATP rankings. 2 failed drug tests, an entire scandal hanging over him, and yet his career is practically untouched. And the worst part? The ITIA thinks this case is closed. But for a lot of us watching, it's anything but. The backlash hasn't faded, the doubts haven't disappeared, and the skepticism about tennis's so-called zero-tolerance anti-doping system is stronger than ever. Let's be real. If this were a lower-ranked player, they'd be done. No second chances, no perfectly timed suspensions, just a ruined career. So, is the system actually built on fairness? Or does it conveniently bend the rules when it suits the sport's biggest stars? I think we already know the answer.